to What the Fuck Just Happened. I'm your host, Liz Enton. If you listen to the intro, you know my story. If not, here's a brief summary. I'm a sciencey skeptic, and when my dad died, I took a shot in the dark and decided to investigate if there was any possible evidence of an afterlife. I assumed that was as realistic as Santa Claus, but I was desperate. However, I was so blown away by what I discovered that I wrote a book and launched this podcast. In this podcast, I will be talking to some fairly normal people about some really weird shit. I speak with everyone from psychic mediums and afterlife researchers to ordinary people who've had some inexplicable experiences. So come, listen. There's no need to draw any final conclusions. Keep an open mind and wonder, what the fuck just happened? This is part 2 of my conversation with Michell Little, the spiritual witch. If you want to listen to part 1, check out episode 5, Should We Hex Donald Trump?, where Michell talks about being a Wiccan, the ethics of casting spells and hexes, and if she has ever gotten any evidence that her spells have worked. In this episode, we talk further about what it means to be a Wiccan, how using a pendulum has given Michell some surprisingly accurate answers, and about NDEs, near-death experiences. Apparently, Michell had died for 3 minutes when she was first born. Did she have an NDE? Also note, this was recorded around August 2020, so some of our COVID and quarantine talk is a little dated. And with that, here's my conversation with Michell.
So I'm also curious because you told me, so you'd been raised a Christian, then you read this one book and you were Wiccan. Was it a much longer journey than that? Or was it like almost overnight? Like, oh my God, this is me.
So this is like totally not how you're supposed to do it, but I just felt like I was Wiccan as soon as I had read this book. And now I have like 30 books now. So it has been a long journey. I've got a grimoire now. I've got like 100 books now, like I said, and I've got a bunch of tools, and it's more like what you feel you need. So I felt I needed a wand, so I got a wand. I didn't just get everything right away and say, oh, I need this and this and that. You go with your intuition, with your gut. Okay, I need this, and I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna get that. So like I got runes, and I've been working with runes recently.
What are runes?
Runes are, I'm working specifically with the Elder Futhark runes, so I'm not sure about the other ones, but these ones specifically are an ancient, kind of like an ancient alphabet, and these are a way to, it's a divination tool, so it's a way to speak with your spirit guides or those who have crossed over or things like that.
Have you gotten any amazing messages from a spirit guide, and if so, how?
So yes, I actually have. I have a pendulum. I have this pendulum who I swear it's like never wrong. It's almost frustrating how not wrong it is. I get mad at it sometimes. So I'll talk about one of the first incidences first. I had witnessed a parrot that had died in front of me. It was really sad. And
I'm sorry.
This woman had brought her bird in to get its wings clipped. And it was just like a routine clip, but the store owner was way too rough with this parrot, and it unfortunately died of a heart attack because you can only be so rough with a bird before it freaks out. And so the bird's name was Arrow, and I've been scarred from this incident for like ever, and it's been, horrible. I'm happy for him now. He's in a really good place. But I went to go contact him after the incident happened, and I was like, hey, are you in a better place? Are you okay? Is everything all right? And he said he was. He said he was in a better place. He said that he was happy and he was free and he was flying now. And so I was happy for him, and I told, the mom is very Christian, but she's also very open to this stuff. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I went to speak to Arrow, and, he's happy. So it was a nice moment that we had.
Oh, that must have meant a lot to her. And
yeah.
How did you get that message? Was it just like in your head where you said you were doing stuff with putting letters together? Did it show up in some way or with a tarot card? Like how how do you feel you actually got that message?
So I use a pendulum. And so with a pendulum, you say, I ask it, I say, show me yes and show me no, because you're using a crystal, and that crystal has its own energies to it. I have an Angelite crystal. And so I ask it to show me yes and to show me no. And it shows me yes and shows me no. And I say, can you please connect me with Arrow? And since Arrow had just passed, I know he was around me. And so I had connected with Arrow, and I knew it was him because I had felt his energies in the store, and I felt his energies again. And so I was able to connect with him, and it was a really positive experience. But I've had other experiences with this particular pendulum, and that's kind of how it works. Show me yes, show me no. Occasionally you'll get a maybe. Yeah, it was a really good experience, and her kids were too young to understand. I'm sure she'll tell them at some point, but they were too young to understand.
Right. And that's so sad about poor Arrow. I mean, I guess we both already said, we just love animals, and a mistreatment of an animal just like makes me feel sick.
Yeah, I it's horrendous. Like, oh my goodness. So I'm so happy we have our animals, because like I would love to die and come back as one of my animals. Like, they're so spoiled.
Oh my God, I agree. And they have no idea this COVID thing's going on. They're so like oblivious to it. I mean, I guess Pickles, my poor dog, misses, like, he used to get scratched by everybody on the street and play with dogs, and then like try to fight all the big dogs. And now he's like having to be really solitary, except for his immediate family. But
yeah, I
it'll
mean,
pass, you know.
Kiwi misses her friends. I can see that, but at the same time, she's like, oh, you're home all the time. We can hang out, right? Every day.
Yes, I think. Yeah, Pickles loves me home all the time.
Yep,
So does my cat Boots. Oh, he like freaks out if I step outside now. He's gotten like 10 times clingier, and my cat's really happy to have me home this much too. But he's, you know, a cat, so he's a little less clingy than my dog.
That's how Kiwi is too. My goodness, she's so, oh my God. Okay, so I'll tell you about these 2 other times with my pendulum.
Oh yes, please.
So the first time I was in the emergency room with my mom, she was having some stomach issues, and the doctors are like, oh my gosh, this could be appendicitis. So I went to the bathroom real quick, you know, because my parents were Christian. I was like, oh, let's not whip out the pendulum real quick and just ask it questions. I don't know how the doctor staff would think about that either. So I started asking questions. I said, hey, is my mom okay? And it said, yes, she's okay. I said, does she have appendicitis? No, she does not have appendicitis. I said, will she need to stay overnight in the hospital? It said, no. So she didn't have appendicitis. She actually had an ulcer in her stomach. She didn't have to stay overnight in the hospital. So on another instance, I was worried I was going to get fired from my job. And this was not like that much before the COVID pandemic. It was like 2 weeks before COVID had really hit. So I think we kind of knew as a society COVID was coming, but it didn't hit. But the job I was at was working internationally, so I think they knew before, you know, the international companies knew before. And so I was worried I was going to get laid off from this company. And my friend was over here, like, I have a meeting with my boss too, and I'm a little nervous about it. And so I said, well, what are you nervous about? She's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and I may or may not get a raise. And I was like, okay. So I asked the pendulum. I said, what's going to happen? Am I going to get fired? It said, yes. And then I asked it, okay, well, is Jamie going to get a raise? And it said, yes. So I ended up getting fired, and she got a damn raise. And I was like, what the hell?
I mean, we don't know exactly what a pendulum is. I'd be, you know, in terms of where it comes from, I'd be curious your thoughts, because there's theories that, you know, you have little micro movements that you're not conscious about, which moves it. So it's like, did you unconsciously sense these things? Like, knowing your mom, is there some part of you that like just unconsciously, do we read each other's health in an unconscious way so much more than we know? Or did maybe, you know, are your guides telling you and you move it? Or is it coincidence? Like, these are all the things we don't know. Like, what do you personally think? Because I'm not going to pretend I even know at all.
I wonder, and I do think that it's interesting because Angelite, the crystal that I have at the bottom of it, is used for healing. That is what it is for. So if you've got an ailment, I mean, I'm not going to say, hey, just have some Angelite in your pocket if you got a broken bone. No, go to the doctor. You know, but Angelite will help you in the healing process. You know, having those vibes around you will help you in the healing process. You know, I think that it is me connecting with my spirit guides, because I've connected with them. I've had chats with them about things, and just the, like, stuff like this just comes true, and I see it. And the interesting thing is, I did testiography before COVID hit. And this is another form of divination. It's tea leaf reading. And in my tea leaves, I saw my wedding that's happening in October, but right before the wedding, I'd seen this big black block, and I was like, what the hell is that?
When was this?
Before
I mean, was it like right before COVID or way before you would have even known that
This
it was coming?
was in February.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah,
that was before we really knew here at all.
Yeah, it was. So in March, it really hit here really bad. So February, yeah, it was like the first week of February, I had done a tea leaf reading. So I feel like divination works, but you have to find the tools that work for you. And I find that I work best with other things. So like the tea leaf reading, lavender, of course, and then the crystal, or the pendulum has a crystal in it. And so I work with that crystal very well, and I love that crystal. You know, we work very well. I'm worried to ask it more things because it's been right on so much stuff. I mean, it predicted my dad was leaving and that he was going to be okay. I mean, my goodness, it's predicted a lot. And a lot of it's come true. All of it's come true. I'm waiting for it to be wrong.
I find that fascinating. And my mind immediately goes to, oh my God, if you ever want to take the time, I'd love to get you and maybe 5 other people and do actual scientific experiments and get the data and see what % it's wrong. Like that's what where mine goes. But if you're ever interested, I would love to have you participate.
I mean, I'm fine as long as my spirit guides are fine with it. I'll have to ask them.
Sure, no problem. Is that something that would sort of feel like it takes it out of its sacred space when people come in with scientific experiments like that?
Honestly, I just feel like it's a lack of respect, it's a lack of understanding, it's a lack of those kinds of things. But when you come at it with a respectful point of view, like, you know, like with sociology and stuff like that, when you're living with the tribe and you're not like necessarily one of the tribe, but you're living like them, like that's a form of respect and great research, and I feel like that's awesome. You know. But some research is just done so disrespectfully.
There's some that go in with like a snideness and no respect for how the people performing these things that have been labeled paranormal do it. So they set up controls or set up the experiments in a way that doesn't work at all with how people work. And then, you know, there is a lot of disrespect. And I feel like some do it with an approach to just show that it's nonsense rather than to be like, maybe this is true, you know. And I feel like those never work, or they're going to decide no matter what this isn't true without really.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if the scientific community was more like, okay, let's try and figure out like what this is, you know, like with the NDEs, for example. I was listening to a podcast about that recently,
and those are near death. I'm just going to tell the audience, everyone, just so you know, NDEs are near death experiences, and if you're following this podcast, we're going to be talking about them a lot. And that was actually the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. So perfect. So sorry, go back to it.
But the near death experiences, I feel like somebody comes out with like a new article or a new thing saying, oh, well, this near-death experience is explained by lack of oxygen to the brain. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is what about like how people are actually feeling? Like everybody's got these almost the same thing is happening, where people are going to these amazing situations, these amazing places where there's just love and calmness. And now, of course, you have some where that's not happening, but the NDEs are telling us.
And for what I get most excited when I hear about NDEs is there's also really factual, evidential stuff people get, which I will save for another podcast, but to go into the details, because I could talk for 2 hours about that, but there's studies where people will be able to see things, you know, they're brain dead, their heart's not working, and then they come back and they say things that were happening in the emergency room that they couldn't know, and they say things that were in the waiting rooms.
Right, in the other room. And that there's so much evidence to talk about, like, okay, so lack of oxygen to the brain would explain how Joe knew that Mary knew about all these things. So it doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. I think that people are having a spiritual out-of-body experience during that time. Now, that's not the right phrasing, but I think they actually are having an experience at that time that's not being accounted for. And there was an actual, I think he was a neurologist or something like that, or some sort of brain scientist or something like that, that did have an NDE, and they did have that out of body experience and was like, holy crap. And I think that changed his whole perspective and view on it.
Yeah, I believe that's Dr. Alexander Eben. I haven't researched it enough to have a strong opinion. I haven't met him to really ask him my list of questions, but yeah, I mean, there's serious medical scientists studying this too. I know like Dr. Sam Pernia, Dr. Bruce Grayson, and I believe
Yeah.
Dr. Pernia got into it because he had some patients that had NDEs, and he was like, but he just believed them that they said this was something else. And what I also find interesting, and I do think you have to have a respect for people and their experiences, because vast numbers of people, from atheists like me to like Wiccans to Christians, of all different belief forms and different cultures, all, not all, because you're never going to get all. There's a tiny percent that say they don't believe it was anything, but almost close to 100% say that this was another level of something. And they tend to like all leave organized religion. They tend to almost all then say, I truly believe life exists now after death, even if they thought it didn't at all before. People who believed in like a stereotypical heaven say that's not what it's like. You know, it's so fascinating, the consistency. And I just do believe you have to have a respect for when people share their experiences, and you can't just dismiss it. I don't think you need to draw such a strong conclusion. There's studies that show the difference of brain oxygen deprivation, and the people do not have the same experiences as during NDEs.
Really? See, and I wondered about that, and I was like, it can't be just brain oxygen. Like that can't explain everybody's situation, you know?
And one of my favorites, which I want to learn more about too, are there people apparently blind from birth who saw during an NDE. Quite a few. And there's a whole book on it by Dr. Kenneth Ring. I believe that was him. He is an NDE researcher. He is not like a woo believey person. He's a doctor and a scientist, very left brain. And he's like, this happened, you know, so.
See, and that's amazing. And I feel like just so much research is being put in the wrong directions, I think. And I just feel in the medical community, there's this disconnect of the spiritual and the physical, because we are spiritual beings, and we are also having a physical experience, the human experience here on earth. And we need to address both of those when we talk about mental illness or when we talk about illness in general.
I think it needs to be looked into a lot more seriously. I mean, there's some people that are, but I wish there wasn't a snideness about it. And I get why, because I think there can be a danger where people with cancer will, turn down traditional medicine that could have saved them to go do energy work. I mean, there really is a danger. But at the same time, given that people are doing traditional and really respecting medicine, you can't deny there's something going on in some other way than we understand through our material perceptions, and it's really worth looking into.
I agree. I definitely agree.
I guess the last thing I want to talk to you about, had you told me when we first talked that you had an NDE when you were born, or?
So I told you when we first talked that I had actually died when I was born, which I find really fascinating. So I was alive, like in the womb, obviously. I had died for a short while. I think it was like 3 minutes while I was, like, my mom was having me. And I think it's really fascinating. I mean, I don't remember anything, obviously, but I think it's really fascinating because I am an empath. And there were things that happened growing up that everyone in the household was affected, but not me, not as much.
Well,
So,
like dynamics within your family type of stuff. I mean, obviously it's not something I expect you to go into, but like kind of difficult challenges.
A little bit. I was actually interviewed on a different podcast, Walk in the Shadowlands, and you can cut that out if you want to. I don't want to like advertise other podcasts.
I don't mind. It's all a community. I like supporting each other. So
yeah, the Walking the Shadowlands podcast, which is actually in the Anchor group that I think we met into. She is amazing. I absolutely love her stuff. And she has some stuff on NDEs too. I think you'll find her episode really fascinating. And she looks into the scientific side as well. So you might want to look into that one. You might find her really cool.
I will. Maybe she should be on this too.
She would love it. You would, yes. So I actually had a demon in my house for a little bit because of my cousin and because of her usage of heroin. And so she actually introduced that, and then a Ouija board opened the door to more entities coming in, and it was just like really bad. But for some reason it just didn't affect me quite as much, and I think that it is due to me being an empath and to that kind of situation. And I have heard that children who experience NDEs or children who have died and come back, they are kind of matured in a way.
And do you feel, no, I've actually heard that in the research, and that even adults, a consistency as adults come back caring a lot less about materialism, and they care a lot more about love and living for a purpose and wanting to help other people. And they really change their lives. So did you feel as a kid, did you feel more advanced than other kids? Were there things you did you relate to that?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Talking to some people, like I just felt like I was a lot more mature. I would help out the grown-ups more. I felt like I could relate to the grown-ups more. When the kids were out there playing, I was out talking to my aunt and just talking to her about stuff. I mean, we weren't necessarily shooting the shit about the mortgage, but we were talking about some more grown-up activities and grown-up things that I related to a lot more. And I've gotten this for so long. A lot of people that, you're so mature for your age. A lot.
And do you feel, like, obviously most people consider themselves good people, but did you feel that kids tend to be more interested in material, or they're really interested in like toys?
Yeah, I was a lot as a kid. I would help do the dishes. I would help vacuum. I would help clean because it made my mom really happy. She loved to clean. She loved doing that stuff. So I'd always help her out with that kind of stuff. I always had some sort of goal, some sort of, I was out practicing drawing. And so I've become a pretty good artist because I was doing drawing and stuff like that. And even when it was really difficult, I'd do that kind of stuff. But I would draw and I would just kind of keep to myself a lot, but I would have something that I was doing. I was doing something all the time. Just doing. It wasn't necessarily, money's not a thing. TV was not a thing. I mean, my mom grounded me one time and I was like, Mom, is it okay if I watch like 30 minutes of TV? My favorite show is on. And she's like, okay. Like I called her to ask for permission when I could have just watched it myself.
Oh, and she wasn't home. Wow, that is pretty mature. I feel most kids would be like, I can do what I want. She's not watching, I'm gonna know. Yeah.
Right. And it was even to a point where I was like, Mom, I found this really, and it was the show That's So Raven. And my mom was super Christian at that time growing up, and she got less and less as time grew. But growing up, she was, and it was That's So Raven, and she was a psychic, and And I said, Mom, is it okay if I watch this show? And she would say yes, or she would say no, and things like that.
And were you allowed to watch That's So Raven? I remember that show.
She did say yes eventually. She did say, you've been really good and I think that you can watch the show. I think that would be okay. And so, I mean, even growing up as I grew up through high school and stuff, I didn't really party. I didn't see a need for it. I still didn't in college. I mean, no.
Oh, I loved partying. I thought it was so much fun.
I didn't do it much. I didn't find a need for it, honestly. I like to read and to learn stuff. I'm a nerd.
I'm both, I think, because I think I liked like sort of the energy. Like I always felt like, especially teenage parties, always had like this vibrancy and kind of like anything's possible, like excitement to them. At least that was my experience. Like it was sort of like this, I found it like a very vibrant experience and very positive, high, buzzy energy. I mean, of course I drank, but like, so that could have been part of the buzz, but it was like, I don't know. I only like to drink even now in certain like very positive, social, happy circumstances.
Same here. Yeah.
And so I guess I found high school parties kind of, not always, but a lot like that. And same with college parties. And then I would also like to go pull up and read and learn. So I don't know, I think I like both always.
That's good. That's good. Like to have a healthy balance like that though. That's really good.
And I don't know,
Yeah.
are you more introverted, you think, than extroverted, or are you just
I think I'm a little bit of both, you know. I'm a communication major, so we studied this quite a bit, and there's like a bit of a scale, and I'm a little bit of both. Like, I need to be extroverted for a bit, but I need my introversion too. Like, I can't just be out all the time.
Okay. I always thought I was that until COVID. Now I'm like, I'm 100% extroverted. Like, I get so much, I have no energy when I'm not like engaged with a lot of people. So this has been a trying time.
Oh, I miss people.
I miss people. I miss cafes and bars and restaurants and groups. And
You know, Brandon's taken me out. My fiance's taken me out for dinner tonight for the first time. First restaurant that's opened, finally.
oh, you guys are open. Oh, wow. Yeah, be careful. But it's going to be nice. I'm glad you're supporting them too. That'll be meaningful.
Yeah, we have limited capacity. So our governor's doing an amazing job. My gosh, she's only opening the city like parts at a time. And we've gotten to the part where it's okay to have people out in the restaurants now. So I'm really happy about that. Really excited for it.
So Michelle, I guess we're like kind of getting to the end. Do you have any tips or anything you want people to, anyone who's interested in Wiccan, what would you most recommend that they go learn?
Oh my goodness. So we have an episode about this on our podcast. It's like, oh, are you new to witchcraft? Do you want to be a witch? I have an entire episode about it. And it's like, you know, just start slow. Don't just jump in head first and say, oh, you need all this stuff and you have to be an eclectic Wiccan and these are all the things that you need and this is what you got to do. And no, don't do that. Don't just label yourself right away. Figure out what resonates with you and what fits with you and then do that. And if you have to be in the broom closet, be in the broom closet. I'm lucky and I don't have to live at home. My parents, they don't have to know and they're in Florida. So it doesn't really affect my life too much. But if you are living at home and you're with your parents and they're very against this kind of stuff, leave the aesthetic. You don't need the aesthetic. All you need is you and the intent. What is your intent? Is it to harm somebody or is it to help somebody?
So thanks, Michelle. This has been such an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you. That was Michell Little, and she can tell you where to find her.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm with the Spiritual Witch. I am the Spiritual Witch. And my upload schedule is every Monday morning. You can find me on Anchor, Spotify, all those kinds of things. The Instagram is at the One Spiritual Witch. And one is the number one, not ONE, just the number one. Email is the One Spiritual Witch at gmail.com. Website is the Spiritual Witch at wixsite.com, and I have an Oracle deck out as well. You can find that at the Game Crafter under the Birds Oracle deck.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, to get updates on when the book launches, download Grief Bingo, and more, go to WTFJustHappened.net, check us out, and subscribe to our newsletter. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if you've had any crazy what the fucks yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hi, reach out either on Instagram at WTF_just_happen_ or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?